Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. Today I'm going to be providing a longer term market analysis for Ethereum, covering some very key indicators, resistance and support levels, as well as the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio. So if you enjoy the content, please do consider leaving a like and subscribing. So first, I just want to talk about all the positive things I'm seeing about the chart. We've reclaimed the 200-week simple moving average, which historically has been a bottom indicator for Bitcoin, so that is a great sign. We've reclaimed the prior cycle's all-time high, and in general, this is starting to look like some sort of deviation below the 200-week average. Essentially, what a deviation is when we go above some key levels and then they don't actually flip or transpire into anything. So most notably, we had this $4,400 peak in April and May of 2021, and then what we did was we deviated above it. So we didn't really form any new significant higher high. It was just some sort of rolling over pattern. So it's essentially the same thing towards the downside, where we have deviated below the 200-week average, which is a great sign. So we have also again reclaimed the prior cycle's all-time high, and we're starting to push back up to the $1,700 level. Now, I want to warn you, this is going to be resistance. If I switch over here back to the daily, we can see that historically the $1,700 area is a major support and resistance zone. So we had essentially 3 bounces of support in both May, June, and July of 2021, and then we came back down, retested this year, and held support twice. So we're back up to this level here where we could potentially be flipping it into resistance. So just be cautious of this level. But if we're starting to come back up and then retest this as support, that is a sign that we might be starting to push back up to, say, the $2,100 level. But in general, I do expect this to hold as resistance, and it's going to be a very key level to watch out for, basically considering how we had support being held off of it on 5 different occasions. Now, if I switch back over to the weekly, for a longer term perspective to really start to consider the possibility we have some sort of macro bottom in place, I really do want to see some retests, some consolidation, and I think this is a little bit too abrupt of a move to get extremely excited. Now, yes, it is a great move. We've reclaimed all these things, all these indicators and moving averages. It's a great sign, but I do want to see further confirmation. I want to see some sort of retest of these levels. That could potentially mean we go back down, retest the 200-week average a few weeks later at around 1200, and then from there we can start to consolidate and lead up higher, or in general just some ranging, some consolidation, some sideways movement, because we don't want to see a move that's too quick, too abrupt, because those are mostly unsustainable. You can look back to prior cycles and we can see how bear markets, the bottoms have not been just straight up, right? If we go back to this 2019 bear market, we can see we essentially consolidated. Yes, we had a rising structure, but we did come back down and retest the prior levels, right? We had this move from $79 all the way up to $155, similar to what we're doing now in terms of return and multiples. But we did come back down from $155 back down, retested around $97, and we formed that macro higher low. So that's kind of what I'm looking out for. That could mean we correct back down from here and then retest that level, or that could mean we do that in a few weeks. But ultimately, that's what I'm looking for. I think this move is a little bit too quick in the short term to get really excited. When we see a longer term confirmation, whether that be a higher low, a retest of the 200-week average, or a retest of the support, that's what I'm looking for to get really bullish on the longer term. But in the short term, again, we do have that $1,700 level as resistance, and potentially just a move that's a little bit too abrupt. Another thing that we can do is we can also go back and look at Bitcoin, which, I think Bitcoin is a great indicator of what can happen during bear markets. So similar here, where we had essentially this bottom pattern where, again, we did bounce from 3,000 all the way back up to 4,100, but we came back down, retested this area, and formed a higher low. So that's essentially what I want to see with Ethereum. I want to see that confirmation and longer term structure start to develop. So let's switch back over to Ethereum here, and let's look at another thing that I'm really starting to look out for that could potentially indicate we might be at some sort of longer term trend momentum shift. So I want to pull up this indicator, the MACD, which essentially is going to be showing us how strong or weak a trend is. And this blue line here is the MACD line. It's a pretty complex formula with the 26 and the 12 EMA, but essentially what's happening here is when the blue line is crossing above the orange line, which is the signal line, that is historically corresponded to some sort of bottom and trend momentum shift from bearish into bullish. So we can look here and we can see that we're going to be having that cross coming up in here a few weeks. Now, if we go back to the prior cycle, again, we can see that cross corresponded pretty close to the bottom here, with the cross being the week of December 17th, very close to the bottom here, but essentially it was a little bit delayed here with a first initial test in November. We just had a little bit further to go before we actually got that cross. So again, we're going to be seeing that cross very soon. This could potentially mean we have some sort of longer term trend momentum shift. But again, I do want to see consolidation. I do want to see eventually a retest of some of those lower valuations, form that macro higher low, and just start to build out some sort of base and accumulation phase. So now I want to switch over to the Ethereum Bitcoin ratio, which is actually starting to look a lot better. So, previously I discussed that we were at this very key pivot point in Ethereum Bitcoin where, we were retesting this level and it looks like we were starting to roll over and lose it. So we actually had this wick going all the way back below, but we quickly reclaimed this level. It's ranging from 0.053 to 0.056, and we did reclaim that. That was a range low for this range we've been in for the past 64 weeks. So good retest of support, and now we're back into sort of the middle of the range. If we're starting to trend back up, consider that we do have resistance ahead of us. We can see time and time again we've rejected off this 0.079 level a few times. And really, it's just going to be strong resistance if we're starting to come back up to this level. But if we can reclaim that and then essentially break out of this high, then that is going to be a longer term continuation for me of this macro uptrend. And in that case, we could have Ethereum reach its prior all-time high much sooner than Bitcoin if those are starting to shift their longer term momentum and start to trend up into a new cycle. But again, that's only if we can actually reclaim this range high and start to break out of this December high. We still need to see confirmation. And until that happens, this is still going to be strong resistance. So if we're coming up here and rejecting, say we come back down to the lower of the range, this is just going to mean Bitcoin's going to start to outperform. And I think that's probably what we're going to see. Ethereum is obviously leading this move, this relief rally that we're seeing. So it might be indicative that we have Bitcoin going to start to take control and surge ahead of Ethereum. Or it might just mean that we have to consolidate here for a little bit longer before we can actually start to see some sort of longer term continuation. So overall, leading into the next cycle, I am very bullish on Ethereum. I think Ethereum looks great here in the short term, but I do want to see that confirmation before I start to get a little bit more assurance that I think the bottom is in. Obviously, we could have the bottom in, or we could have it, in a few months, but I still think we need a little bit more time before we can actually start to get a clear sign on the longer term perspective with Ethereum. And again, anywhere around the $1,000 to $1,200 range, I think is a phenomenal region to accumulate. I talked about on the channel how I was accumulating starting around the $1,000 range. And I think that going into the next few months, we could potentially see a retest of that level. I'm hopeful that we can, because I do want to accumulate more Ethereum for a longer term vision. I think Ethereum is going to do very well next cycle. And overall, I'm pretty bullish in the long term, but I still think we have a short term correction ahead of us and potentially a little bit longer of consolidation before we can definitively get excited for the macro. So I hope you guys enjoyed the content. If you have any comments, suggestions, or feedback, please do leave those below. And as always, I will see you in the next one.